Welcome back to Voices of Impact, the space where we explore leadership beyond titles, hustle, and performance, and into identity, clarity, and meaningful impact. So today's episode is for leaders who are in the middle of growth, right? So navigating expansion, responsibility, and visibility, right? While quietly asking, who am I becoming as I lead at this level, right? So important question there. So I'm so excited to welcome Randi Deckard, Senior Vice President of Growth at BESLER. She's a rare blend of scientist, strategist, and people-centered growth leader, which is amazing. She began her career as a clinical lab scientist and has since evolved into a go-to-market executive who has influenced over $100 million in revenue across the healthcare industry. So SVP of Growth, Randi oversees sales, marketing, and customer success, aligning data, experimentation, and AI, right? It's a lot of tech involved to drive profitable customer-centric growth. But what really sets her apart is how she leads, right? So through identity, emotional intelligence, and deep self-trust. So she's a powerful advocate for identity-driven leadership, just like me. So we connected through that, helping leaders step fully into who they already are, with clarity, with confidence and conviction, right? So especially in this fast-moving AI-enabled environment, which is very important to talk about. So it's easy to outsource our thinking, voice, or self-belief, especially in the AI world. So in this conversation, we explore leadership from the inside and out, right? Navigating the messy middle, the imposter syndrome, psychological safety. What does that look like? What does that feel like? And humanity, right? So what happens when leaders stop waiting for permission and start owning their presence, right? Especially at the executive level. So this is a conversation about becoming not someone new, but more aligned version of you. So Randi, welcome to Voices of Impact. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm so delighted to be here, Vina.
Great. Awesome. So yeah, let's get into it. Yeah. So Randi, your career reflects growth, reinvention, and deep self-trust, right? So what has your leadership journey looked like from the inside, right? Not just on paper.
So I think the thing that folks need to take away is when I was a clinical scientist and moved into the commercial side of healthcare, I'd already been a leader. I was leading a lab of people. And one of the things that I learned as I went from leading clinical people to leading people in business is that the closer you can get and understand what drives people, so actually care, like you can't fake care, right? So empathy is so important. And one of the things that I feel like really helped me is I've always really cared about people and in getting to know them, what drives them. And so while I have a ton of playbooks, everything that I do and all the systems that I create are really guardrails. So people can show up authentically. And then what we work on is how do you work best in this framework, but still remain you?
Right.
And once again, that requires, you already hit the nail on the head, creating a safe place where people feel that they can experiment and maybe fail, but with the intention of getting better, right?
Right.
So having that psychological safety, it's okay to experiment. You're not always going to knock it out of the park, but you are going to move forward. So progress over perfection. And then also, not micromanaging is so important. And so really trusting your people. And what I've found is the more that I have let go and, made things clear what we're trying to achieve, the creativity that people bring is just so impactful and even better than I could have imagined or thought up. But I think it takes a unique leader to be able to step back and let their people actually lead. And so the thing that I have done is I create leaders. Whether or not they have the title, they're still a leader.
Exactly. Oh, wow. I mean, you touched on so many things. I just was like, oh, I love this. I love how you talked about not micromanage because, I've been there, right, with leaders who, yes, I mean, sometimes maybe people unintentionally do it, but you want to make sure. And I think that comes into empathy and self-awareness.
Right.
That some leaders might not be intentionally doing it, but we have to be aware of where are we showing up micromanaging, even though we don't think that way. So yeah. And, just kind of understanding empathy is a huge thing. Like you say, love to create leaders. Where you're going, what drives you in that legacy. right? And I think we both have that same legacy of this is why we're doing the podcast right now, is to have that ripple effect of leaders and make them understand, like, what does it look on the inside? Because everyone talks about the outside and it's nice, but this is different. That is a conversation. So thank you so much for saying all of that. I think you touched on a lot of things that I already wanted to ask. But yeah, but going into a little bit more on a deeper level, I know you touched on this a bit, but what does it mean to operate as a CEO beyond the title? I know we talked about that before this conversation, but in an organization, everyone's, kind of like, hey, I have this title of like VP or whatever, but what does it look like in a day-to-day though, like beyond that?
Yeah, so I think people get attached to their title too much. I think that we had that conversation, and I think everyone needs to realize if you can, for me, it's about showing up authentically. I am super creative and I'm also funny, snarky. Imagine that based on our conversations. The reason I shared those few things, the creativity and the sassy, snarky, is one of the things that I had this misconception of is like, well, if I'm a C-suite, I have to be so buttoned up and I can't have fun. And I can't act that way. And one of the things I realized is like, I wasn't in alignment when I was acting that way. Right. And so one of the things that I have personally done is ensure that I find ways to be creative and bring joy or happiness into everything that I do. So even our meetings, like we'll have icebreakers where it not only helps us learn about each other beyond our titles, and it's not just for me, it's for colleague to colleague, right? Peer to peer, that I think that is super important, that we're invested in each other's success. And the only way we can do that is if we're invested in them as a person, not just what
Right, exactly.
more than how my actions do not align to my words. You're my accountability partners, right? So I have proven that we can have fun and still drive revenue. I have proven that we can be creative in our approach and still drive repeatable revenue. And I think sometimes we get so stuck and so rigid that that actually causes us to stagnate, right? And so I'm always encouraging people to have what I call these little micro experiments. What did we learn? Because my definition of failure is it's only failure if you didn't learn something from it. If you learn something from it and you change what you're going to do or attempt and you keep doing that, that's not failure. That's learning and that's growth. And I think once again, some leaders get stuck in that, like, oh, we can't fail. Well, of course you're going to fail.
Yes, that's awesome.
Success is messy, and we have to live in that messy middle, but still keep people motivated.
Yes. No, absolutely 100%. Like even in business, especially as an entrepreneur, this is a huge thing that I've seen. And I know executives, like you said, have that rigid thinking, but it's okay to fail. Like it's okay. And just because you do doesn't mean you're a failure. That's how you learn from the mistakes, because how else are you going to grow? I think that mindset shift that I always also say is, progress over perfection. We're not trying to be perfect here. Me and Randy, whoever's listening, we are so authentic. We're so real. We make mistakes. But even this podcast, I had some executives who came on here and they were like, I should have said this, I should have said that. But I was like, hey, like, just be yourself, right? This is what it's all about. It's okay if you make a mistake, and that's what makes a true leader is like back to, what I said is being aware and understanding that that's what it's the kind of becoming, right? It's the becoming stage. And you're always going to be in that middle of becoming and learning about yourself. And I like how you said creativity. That is something that I was also like, right? So rigid, but now I'm bringing in my creativity. It's a joy. Like you have more joy in your life and you actually love the work you do when you add the creativity in. So absolutely 100%. I love how you touched on that. So thank you so much for sharing that and being so raw and real about it. So, going into leadership skills, right? So I know it's just very AI focused now, right? So what leadership skills, addition to what we had talked about, like are more important in an AI driven future? So more people skills, exactly.
So, as much as I use AI and I call myself an AI enabled leader, AI just allows me to people more. It allows me to spend more time with leaders, spend more time with my team, spend more time with customers. And I think where some people are getting it wrong is that, AI going to replace some things? Absolutely. But it shouldn't cause friction, right? And I think that as leaders, the best thing that we need to do is keep our critical thinking, right? And always be asking, is what I'm doing creating friction or is it removing friction? And I have seen some of my fellow go-to-market leaders, as an example, leverage AI and they're not getting the outcomes. And then as we're talking, they realize once again, they've added friction and that was not the point, right? To add friction. And so sometimes it may seem oversimplified by saying, okay, just ask that question. Is this adding friction or not? But if you think about end-to-end the customer journey and everything that touches that, so you have your internal ops, product, you may have external facing people, you have people who are looking at your product, people who have purchased your product or are using your product. It's basically the whole ecosystem. If you ask that one question, is deceptively simple, but if you ask, am I removing or adding friction? That is a litmus test of whether you should move forward with something. And it's super quick, right? Yeah. But I think sometimes we have the bright, shiny object. Ooh, there's this AI tool and they can do this, or there's this AI tool and they can do this. And I'm not anti-AI because trust me, I have 200 plus custom GPTs and I use AI daily.
Right.
But it is making sure that it is not adding friction, but I'm still keeping my critical thinking. And I think that's one of the things that some leaders have, maybe the bright, shiny object, they've let go of some of that critical thinking. And so that's just one question that I use as kind of a North Star filter.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I just wrote about this in my newsletter as well, that literally slow down. It's very similar. So, it's literally I literally tell people to slow down when making a decision, or use your intuition, especially with women out there.
Yeah.
They just forget that intuition. And I was like that. And I think we're all guilty of it, but that's how we learn. And coming from two people right now, I can definitely say I'm just more into my intuition on what's aligned, what's not aligned. I had to say no to things that weren't aligned, honestly, for the past week or two. And that's how you make a decision. Like you said, does it add the friction or does it reduce it?
Right.
It's very important. Is it adding more to my plate? Am I drained versus am I more joyful? So with women especially, we don't really get into ourselves. We don't look within. I think that's so important that you have to look back at, your North Star, get the clarity first. And a lot of people skip this, thinking hey, it's not necessary. It is. It is necessary to go back in, and it takes not even a minute to do this. So this is a reminder to be just slow down, right? And understand, be intentional about what you're doing, each and every decision, and you'll realize you're going to be more in alignment. And that's faster. You get faster to your results. Honestly, it really works. So I love how you talked about the small one message, right? That's so important. So thank you for sharing that as well. So I know I keep saying this identity upgrade, right? I keep talking about identity, but what does that mean in your words? And how does that influence, like we talked about decision-making or visibility, especially for whether it's women or men, but especially for women? What does that look like when we say identity upgrade?
Yeah. So I think for me, and the way that I define it, and this is obviously through a personal lens, so women related is, and I have to kind of take a step back to answer this. When I was earlier on in my career, I felt that just doing good work was enough. And what I was missing was the visibility, right? So one of the things that I have learned as I've matured and have more experience is that it doesn't matter how good my work is unless I'm visible. And this is not from an ego perspective. So everyone calm down. It's not from an ego perspective. It's from a visibility, and it's about who is talking about me when I'm not in the room and what are they saying? And that's where I think, whether you're male or female, you may need, that upgrade. And also your identity is the work that you're doing. How are people talking about you? Right. And especially when you're not in the room, I think is super important. And I would say this does impact more women, because I have found that over my career as a woman earlier on, I was a people pleaser and a fixer, right? So I would just do stuff done and not actually let anyone know I just took care of it, or a lot of stuff got handed off to me just because I was a fixer. And then I didn't realize why I was stuck going like, why aren't I getting these promotions, or why aren't I being looked at? Because no one knew that I was doing it, because I was just quietly doing it. So that's why I
Mhm.
say not from a place of ego. And I think it's really important that not only do you have authority, but it's visible, and like it's not from a place of ego, but people need to truly understand what you do and what you're capable of. And those stories need to be shared when you're not in the room, because that's powerful.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And whether, like you talked about, whether it's female or male, I see a lot of this more in females,
I agree. I
especially.
agree.
People have come to me saying like, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to put myself out there. Even on this podcast, it's a visibility thing. Like, should I say this? Should I say that? But sometimes you have to be honest with yourself and get vulnerable.
Uh-huh.
It might not land for everyone. It might not be for everyone, but you're putting your story out there. And these stories could really open up opportunities,
Yeah.
whether you're an entrepreneur. And my own story, of course, I had visibility blocks until like last month, right? So I was trying to shy away from posting myself. But I realized, like, you know what? No one really knew what I was doing until now. And it feels great, right? And yes, like I said, not people might judge, but you have to kind of understand that you have to get comfortable with it. It's going to feel
Uh-huh.
uncomfortable at first. And some people like, should I do? And I had some people who, did not get on the podcast because they didn't want to be visible. But you have to really get honest with yourself, and that identity upgrades. If you want to take your, life or career to the next level, this is a necessary thing. And like, Randi said, it's not from a place of ego at all. Like, I'm better. I think we need to shift that narrative and shift that mindset that it's okay. It's coming from a self-worth place. Like,
Mm.
I have the conviction, I know what I'm saying, and, I'm putting it out there. And if I'm perceived well, like, why not? Right? Why not? I deserve better. Right? So it's coming from a place of that. So thank you so much for sharing that as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, I wanted to ask this important question because there are some women, and I want to say this out loud, that, they've come from not a safe environment,
Uh-huh.
whether that's personally or professionally. So some people don't really understand what it feels like. So what does like authentic leadership, aligned leadership look like when people actually feel psychologically safe to be bold?
Uh-huh.
What does that feel like if you want to paint a picture for them?
Sure. I think if people, I think it's obvious if you're in a place that's psychologically safe, because you feel like you have been given permission by that culture to experiment, and you are not judged. It's like, oh, tell me more. What did you learn from that? Great. Like, can we share that with the team? Like, it's truly like those types of conversations. And for those of you who have not experienced this, let me share a story just really quick. So I was at a startup, and my boss changed. And when I got the new leadership, I couldn't do anything right for this person. And that's not the point of the story, but the point of the story is the only thing that changed was the leader. And I had to realize, or I came to the realization, that it didn't matter what I did, that I was just not safe with this person because they didn't trust me, right? And
Right.
safety comes from trust, and trust takes time to build. And I, as a leader, work very hard to not only build trust, but keep trust, right? And this goes back to what I talked about earlier. Actions greater than words, right? No matter what I say, it's my actions that are the true test. And I'm aware enough, and I have those conversations with my team. And I also share my mistakes. Hey, this is what I did. This is what I thought. This is the bet that I made. And this is what I learned, right? So I actually model for them what it looks like to experiment or do things that maybe don't turn out the way that we thought they would. So that in turn gives them permission, if I can use that word,
Yeah.
to go and do that, right? But I think it's also very obvious when you're in a place where you don't have that. It's the way you feel. Like that example where I shared with my boss. I used to have this like pit in my stomach.
Yeah.
I would get the sweats before I walked into this person's office, because I just knew, like, no matter what I did, like, it just was there because there was no trust. They did not trust me.
Right. I loved how you talked about your own story. So, being vulnerable is a huge, strength,
Mhm.
right? And that's one thing I want to say out loud. because a lot of women, struggle, especially executives. But yes, I absolutely agree. Having that culture, and feeling is when, like you said, feeling at peace when you step into a room versus nervous, right? And trust is a huge factor. Trust is low in anywhere
Mm-hmm.
nowadays. So that's why we're building trust now, is having a good mentor and having a good culture. So I've talked to people, me, myself, have been in toxic environments. A lot of people I talk to have. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why I asked this question. I hope it really helps everyone out there to say the first thing is, number one, create safety within yourself. That's what I would say. That's the inner work that I have done when I was not in, healthy environments, is especially for females, especially their safety within yourself. Like, you want to cultivate that. What does it feel like for you? Take the time to ask, like, what would make you feel safe? Paint that picture for yourself first. What kind of leader do you want to be? What kind of leader do you want to talk to when you want to be in the room with? And actually seek out those types of mentors, right? Because that's something that I learned, that I never had a role model growing up, which is why I created this, startup and everything. And just having that, knowing that, hey, there are a lot of people out there. Randy's a great one. I'm there. There's so many out there. And that's what got me to that leader. And that's what I learned from. Absolutely. Having that cultural safety and someone you can trust, right? But also it comes within yourself. Amazing. I love these conversations. So next question, what most often gets in the way of leaders stepping into their highest version? I know we've talked about a couple, but what else would you like say?
I would say overthinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is so easy to get caught in that trap and overthink anything, and so you don't take action. And I would say, once again, that's a lived experience. When earlier in my career, as I was taking on responsibility, I caught myself a few times like, why am I stuck? And it was almost always came back to overthinking, and back to kind of what you said about trusting yourself, right? Over time, I learned to trust myself more, just through experiences, having mentors and sponsors who I could bounce ideas off. And then also just, look, I'm not going to get it right every time, but as long as I'm learning, once again, progress over perfection. And like I said, as someone who mentors emerging leaders right now, I
Mhm.
would say the overthinking and the self-doubt is the hugest thing. And with that is like, you have to give yourself permission to move forward. The only one who's going to give that to you is you, right? And
Mhm.
so that's a conversation I have quite frequently. I think you're overthinking. You need to give your permission to move forward, and then frame it as, what am I going to learn from this if I don't get the outcome I want? How am I going to act if that happens, right?
Right.
But like I said, those are the kind of the themes that I see.
Yeah. I think everything, like, I've been learning from my mentors is the mindset piece. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I honestly, that's it. Because a lot of executives think it's a strategy. Like, I didn't change my strategy. I didn't experiment with my strategy. It's, yes, that is there, but it's really the mindset piece that makes you successful and doesn't lead to burnout with making impact, right? I think that's
Mm-hmm.
like the topic that this is also about, is like, you make an impact and people are like, I'm burning out. But if you have that, if you lead with clarity and lead with that mind of, growth over progress over perfection, it's so much easier. There's an ease to it. And another thing I want to add is, I've learned a lesson, is faith over fear. I think
Mm-hmm.
that, like, kind of goes into overthinking, because we're so scared, right? There's the
Mm-hmm.
fear is dominating over the faith, right? And the faith comes from within yourself, right? Knowing your unique value, know what you bring to the table. So that's self-worth. You really need to do that self-worth, the inner work, but also always thinking about the possibilities. Why not me? Why can I not deserve the best, right? So why can I not step into that empowered identity, the leader I'm meant to be? Like, what is stopping it is, yes, there are going to be a lot of, there could be judgments, past experiences, like you said, learn from that. But every single thing that you've gone through is a lesson. And the only way, it's like, I think of it as like going from like kindergarten to elementary school. Like, you can't go to the next one until you finish the test, right? So It's like a test, but basically it's faith over fear. Always have faith in yourself. Whoever believes in the universe, there's always a reason for if something's misaligned. You want to make sure that you don't get stuck on the outcome, because I do see a lot of executives do this. I've been there. It's a lesson we're all learning, but letting go and not attach yourself to the outcome, but enjoying the journey. So these are things that will unblock these obstacles to getting to the next level. So lovely. Okay, so going into emerging leaders, as you talked about. So what practices help leaders continuously evolve personally and professionally?
So I think the biggest thing is curiosity, and curiosity is tied to, always be learning, as I call it, ABL. And checking your ego, right? Like as a leader, I'm the first person to say, I don't know everything, but everything's figure outable. And whether we need to experiment to figure out, whether there's people in my network that I can ask, whether it's a book I can read, whatever. But I think it's that curiosity is just a huge piece, and that growth mindset, like always be learning and not fix. And then you also hit on this a little bit earlier. It's about being self-aware. What are my blind spots? So one of the things that I've done as a leader, especially as I build teams, it's like, what am I not good at? Because I need to have my team even me out. So whatever my weaknesses are, that's where I'm looking to other people. Like I said, I don't have to know everything, but I know how to build high-performing teams, because I build teams that help me where I'm not my strongest. And like I said, I don't have to necessarily be the smartest person in the room, but I know how to build great teams, and I know how to motivate them, and I know how to stay curious.
Yeah.
Ask better questions.
Yes. That's a huge thing. And as a coach, it's always asking questions, curiosity.
Yes, ask better questions.
Yeah. And it comes down to, I know we had talked about, you and I, is the why, like your North Star. That's a whole different conversation, but like just asking yourself why, right? Like, why do you want to do this? Why is this important? Why do you want to, what's your legacy? Why is this legacy important to you, right? So asking better questions, being curious. Oh, what is that person doing? Like, how can I feel more inspired that she's doing this? Right. So how is that affecting me on a different level, right? Get to know you, not just only professionally, but other aspects of you, right? So absolutely. Like, I love what you said. And to your point, a real true leader, there's different types of leaders, but we tend to go to the wrong leaders, right? And that's okay. Like, that's totally fine. But as mentioned, like you said, actions have to match words if they can really walk the talk. Right. Being true, being vulnerable, having these traits that you could see who's a true leader, knowing that, okay, who's like micromanaging, putting yourself down. So I'm just kind of recapping versus, hey, your ideas are welcome here, and, we'll take your ideas and we'll implement them because we love what you're doing, what you bring to the table. Right. So these are the kind of things that you would know what leader to lean on, and you kind of learn from them. Right. So that's how you become a better leader. Okay. So before we wrap up, I'd love to zoom out for a moment. And what's next for you personally? So any like creative pursuits or chapters you're stepping into right now?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. One is I want to be on the red dot, so I have a few TEDx applications out. So that's one. And then I'm in the process of writing a book, and it's around, clarity comes from motion, right? And that's about moving forward, not the overthinking. So those are a couple of the things that I'm working on, that are fueling me, and they are outside, corporate, but they are still, part of my corporate persona, because all the ideas and experiences that I have are what are fueling both the talk as well as the book. So yeah.
That's great. I love how you're writing a book. Like, I'm excited for you. I'm an author myself, so I've written a lot of books, so I can relate to a lot of authors here. So many people are writing it, so it's so great. That's so exciting for you. And yes, it's that inner fire, right? It's that fire, and it comes from within. It's not like an external thing, which I love about you, that you really know yourself, right? And that's so important to become the leader you're meant to be. That's the first step. Okay, awesome. So fun rapid fire round, just quick answer. Let's see. A book that shaped your growth mindset.
So it would be Tony Robbins, 100%. Yep.
Yeah, I love Tony Robbins. He's great. I just saw a reel and I was just like, it just really was heartfelt, like, real. So I love him. It's great. Amazing. Let's see. A word your mentees or your people, use to describe you in one word.
I would say loyal. Like I said, I build trust, but loyalty is definitely a word. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. That's very important. And it's rare these days. I know it sounds like cliche, but it is rare.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that. And I think this is interesting. I know you already talked about this, but the last question was if your leadership philosophy was a book title, what would it be? But I think you already explained it.
But my true north is people, right? Because people are everything, right? So yes, I create systems, but the only reason those systems work end-to-end journey is because of people, right? So yeah.
Yes. It's all about the people and, helping them and serving them. And that's why I love doing the work I do as well, because it's about serving your mission and purpose. And every day, like, I just wake up and I'm so happy. And everyone's like, hey, like, how are you so happy? And I'm like, it's the people, it's serving. That's what I'm meant to do. So, wow, this was such a great conversation. So, Randi, this conversation was like totally grounding and expansive. So what really stands out is your reminder that leadership isn't something we grow into someday. It's like something we reclaim, right? And embody more fully over time as we progress, as we grow, right? So your insights on identity-driven leadership, like psychological safety and using AI as a tool is more about self-trust, right? Knowing yourself, being self-aware. So these are really important for leaders navigating growth right now. So for everyone listening, I invite you to reflect on this question. So where might you already be the leader you're waiting to become, right? So we're not waiting for, you're already there, right? You just have to kind of go in within yourself and reclaim that power within you, right? So thank you for your wisdom, Randi, your humanity, and the way you lead with both rigor and heart. It's been such a joy having you on Voices of Impact. Then to our listeners, if you're a visionary leader who believes in leading with authenticity, identity, and impact, feel free to message me on LinkedIn or even Randi. So I'm launching a free high vibe community for purpose-driven leaders talking about these conversations and these themes and who are ready to rise into their next chapter and become who they're meant to be. So stay tuned for that. Until next time, remember that leadership isn't about becoming someone new. Like I said, it's not a new version. It's not like starting from scratch. It's just really fully claiming who you already are.